Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about startups, ideas, and keeping them secret. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Fredrik, I really think that I have a good idea for a startup, but I'm afraid that someone will steal that idea. What should I do? And the short answer is you can keep your code private, but at the same time, it's just a matter of time before someone steals your idea, or at the very least copies it. Let me explain. So the full length of the question was something along the lines of this, and in addition, the person was stating that my dilemma is that I have a repository which I would like to also use as something to enhance my CV. But I really am concerned that people will steal my idea. And is there a way for me to have this project as part of my CV and as my portfolio, and at the same time protect my intellectual property? And to kind of answer that, no. Well, in a way, I suppose. What I wrote back was very simply that it's going to be very hard for you to keep something secret and at the same time show it to people so that they can see how well your CV is structured or how well your portfolio is looking. That's kind of catch-22. And there are certain things that under extraordinary circumstances people do in the business world that protects your property in a way, and that it would be to sign an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement. But I can tell you right here and now that odds are that no one will sign an NDA, especially not someone who's going to hire you to look at your project. So in this scenario, this is kind of where that discussion between web and a native application comes, because the benefit of the web is at the very least that if your idea is sensitive or you have some secret that you really need to keep private, you can do that by just keeping the source code private and then just have the user interact with the internet, or like with the interface that you've created, right? And that's probably the way that you should go here, and this is what I suggested to the person. Like, you can put up a private repository, a lot of companies do, mine included, and then you can simply keep all the source code private, and then you can host some version of your application that can be showcased to the customer or the employer or something like that, right? Because in the reality of most hiring processes, there's not that many companies who are they're not going to go through your source code, like unless it's a very specific thing. They're not going to go through the source, and most of the companies who are looking for portfolio examples and things of this nature, they're really more interested in like the end product, the thing that you made, the thing that you can hold up as some type of proof that you know what you're doing. And that is definitely something that you can showcase without necessarily losing out on your intellectual property. Usually the time when people start stealing your ideas, it doesn't really come before you have proved anything. And I promise you this, every single person who's ever started a startup, more or less, has truly believed that this is going to make it, this is going to be the thing. The reality of the situation is that most startups fail within the first year, even faster than that in some cases. I think it's only roughly 10% of all startups that actually make a profit. And so you can absolutely protect yourself and be as conservative as possible, but I will argue to you that it is much more important for you to get the idea out there as quickly as possible, because very few people, unless you are truly solving some very complicated problem that people have been struggling with for years and that requires some extraordinary solution that can be patented in some fashion, they're not going to be interested. Most, honest to God, there is more work going into getting people to adopt your idea than it is, like, it's very rare. that you create something that is so amazing that people just immediately start throwing money at you. I mean, it didn't even happen for Google, so why would it happen for you? I'm simply stating to you that don't get into the headspace that you're going to try to protect something that is actually not worth anything, because as long as it's not adopted by anybody, it's not worth anything. And the second part to that answer is going to be that it's actually not a bad thing to get competition in many ways. It is a good thing and a bad thing, of course. But if you are coming in with a new, fresh idea or some solution and you're the first person on the market, then you might face something very similar to what I've faced with my company in the past, where people are unsure if this is going to float. Is this something that's worthwhile? And usually the way that it goes is that you get a few people to invest in the thing, people are still a little bit unsure about it, and then you get your first competitor. Now, if you get a competitor, that actually strengthens your argument that this thing has some validity to it, and it actually makes it much more likely that people will buy into the idea, because now the concept is growing. Sure, you have someone to compete against, but at the same time you have more people in the space, which means that the space itself is growing. And the fact of the matter is, most of the time you're not so, it doesn't really matter if you have a competitor, it just has to be a competitor that is not a threat to you, or at the very least someone who you can overshadow very easily. If you have a look at how, say, Microsoft controlled the market for the longest time, it didn't really matter that they had competitors because they were so dominant in the space that they were still taking over the entire planet. And the same thing goes for you. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're concerned about keeping your startup idea secret, you can just invest in a private project, in a private repo. There are free versions as well. Bitbucket has it. I think GitHub is giving you 1 or 2 free repos at this point as well that are private, and just go that path. And then you can showcase, if the solution is a web solution, the end product or a demo version of the end product to your future employer as a portfolio thing or something like that. But it's not feasible for you to keep everything completely private. Nobody's going to sign an NDA with you to just look at your project. Usually you have that sort of process when you're dealing with people who, for legal reasons, needs to look at your source code or things like that. When you do an audit, as an example, if you're going to be PSI compliant or something like that. And I also want you to know that the odds of you having an idea that is so revolutionary that it blows everybody's mind is fairly low. So you should, rather than investing in trying to protect your intellectual property, invest in developing the idea, because as soon as you make it public, there is a chance that somebody's going to copy the idea, and it's just a matter of time. Actually, if you are truly successful, you're going to get people who copy you. The benefit with that is that means that your space is actually growing, and the awareness of the problem that you are solving is growing, and that's also a very good thing. The downside is, of course, you have a competitor, but it doesn't really matter if you are far enough ahead that you can actually keep them way back behind you. And that's actually the way that you should look at this. Competition is something that is inevitable. The goal is not to not have any competitors. The goal is to leverage the fact that you were first. And that's usually how it goes. If you are first, you have time to take over the market while the others are playing catch up. And you have to leverage that time effectively. That is pretty much how all companies work. Have a great day.